external interest, please let us know. Under item number 3, deputations, petitions, and public meetings, we have none. Under unfinished business, we have none. Moving on to item number 5, new business, starting with 5A, interim report of the Integrity Commissioner. Everyone has received the report. Any questions or comments? Councillor Bray?
Comment the front page where it actually says Councillor Bray and Councillor Smith. It should be corrected to Mayor Smith.
Right.
And then just kind of a comment to the residents was that I regret having to use the Integrity Commissioner for concerns such as this. I know it costs money, but when I heard it on the radio, I really felt it was wrong. And there's been enough concerns at this table about people leaking in camera. But I felt if something like this might have to got out, it needed to be identified for
Councillor Stockwell?
Mr. Mayor, I understand. I understand that people get frustrated from time to time. But the last thing that the Integrity Commissioner said to us when he left was that council should figure out a better way of dealing with it rather than going directly to him. And you know, the simplest thing to start with when we approach the end of this and say, look, here's what I think happened, and if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, and if you're wrong, you better do something about it. I just think to run off the Integrity Commissioner every time something goes on just doesn't serve me.
Any questions or comments? I'll make a comment with respect to that. I accept full responsibility, and certainly I did make an error, and I did speak beforehand. There's a reason I did that, which I've explained to the Integrity Commissioner, and he understands and agrees, and that's reflected in his report. So I do apologize for that. I can assure you it won't happen again, and I'll leave it at that. No other questions or comments? I'll read the question. Moved by Councillor Stockwell, seconded by Deputy Mayor by Polsey. Resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it receive the interim report of the Integrity Commissioner dated November 22nd, 2016. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask members of Council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Blanchet?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor by Polsey? In favor. Councillor Gray? In favor. Councillor Eagle?
In favor.
Councillor Smith? In favor. Councillor Stockwell?
In favor.
In favor.
The board is 7-4, 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Moving on to item number 5B, Corporate Efficiency Review Recommendations. And Mr. CAO, you wish to speak, please?
Thank you, Worship. Members of Council, in your agenda package is a report dealing with 8 recommendations from the public report of the efficiency review, and 1 recommendation that came from the closed session. These recommendations pertain to different departments within the organization. I circulated them to various departments and got feedback with respect to what actions are being taken with respect to implementing the recommendations or suggestions with respect to the KPMG report. And in the report is basically a synopsis of each of the actions that are being taken to address the recommendations. Some of the recommendations are being implemented as we speak in terms of changes to the budget. Some are being implemented as we get into the first quarter of 2017, some by the middle of 2017. Some we are already addressing, and there's highlights in the report with respect to how we're addressing those items. A couple of suggestions. It's being recommended that we not take action at this time. One was the hiring of an additional resource to support the human resources function. And although I recognize that there is a need in this particular area, it's my recommendation that 2017 is not the best year to do that, and there should be some consideration in 2018 for that, given some financial constraints that we have in 2017. And the next one is with respect to not being supported is a new administration facility. Although we are tight, and we continue to be tight in this organization, and we try to make modifications to fit more people in again, I don't believe it's appropriate to consider that at this particular time. There may be an opportunity to present itself in the future for that, but at this particular time it is quite an expense, and I would not suggest proceeding. With respect to the standard titles for management positions. That was the item that had come through from the closed session report, and those are fairly minor changes, but the titles reflect kind of standard practice with respect to municipalities these days in terms of how these types of positions are titled. So, with that, Your Worship, entertain any questions.
Thank you, George. Questions or comments? Councillor Craig?
A comment about number 2, which was the addition of a second resource within human resources. My concern there was that we spent a lot of money on the KPMG report. I think it was fairly substantial. The only recommendation to hire in any department throughout the entire organization of HR. And yet when you look at our budget for 2017, we're adding staff to other departments that didn't hit the KPMG report. So I'm wondering if, rather than push that off a year, we really should look at it again. Because the value of that report was to see who our staff was and what they were doing. The only area that they truly identified that probably needed help, we're just going to say, no, not this year, it's not on our short-term radar. But to me, the value of KPMG was that they were looking in from outside, and that they truly felt that there was a shortage. So I think that we need to discuss it when we're discussing the 2017 budget.
Councillor Brady, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to the scale, if I may. Does not the HR person have support from other staff? From other staff?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, yes, the HR coordinator does have support through the payroll position. That position, that position on a 0.5 basis or half the time is there to support the HR role. That position also has responsibilities with respect to payroll, and so it is pulled in different directions. The support is provided, but it's not a dedicated support.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just while we're on the topic, we had, at first when we brought HR on, did we not do that on a part-time basis? Or shared it with another municipality and pushed that on, and that was doing time. And I'm just wondering if there's a possibility to do that.
Your Worship, yes, that's exactly how it was. We introduced the HR function within the municipality on a gradual basis, and we split a full-time position in the township of Clearview for approximately 2 years, and maybe slightly less than 2 years. And then we saw the need to move into a full-time position. And coincidentally, Clearview was of the same mind. They've been introduced in the organization, and we felt that the demand was there. So we took that on, and happened to be our current HR coordinator, applied and successful in coming to start using on a full-time basis. And when she got up to speed, we did have our payroll clerk who expressed an interest in terms of learning about HR, and we thought from a career development standpoint that we would engage her, and she's been very helpful to our HR coordinator on a part-time basis. So the KPMG report identifying additional resources.
Anyone else? George, I have 2 items, I guess. So we now have a half-time assistant to the HR coordinator, as I understand it, through the payroll clerk, correct?
Yes, it's approximately a half-time position. As I said, it was pulled in different directions, so the intent is that it's there to support the HR.
So are we looking then, to be clear, are we looking for a full-time HR person or another part-time? Are we looking for 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week?
The suggestion is an additional HR person, and that was kind of the second part of Councilor Smith's question in terms of potentially exploring, to maybe a partnership again with my colleagues that didn't answer that part of the question. But yeah, the recommendation is that the town gives consideration for an additional full-time.
And then my next question, if someone could please explain to me a little further, because I'm struggling to understand the item number 3C with respect to the fire department and the sick time and vacation time at the end of the year. I need to understand that better.
So the issue with the firefighters not being on our payroll is because they, at this point, we don't pay them for what they work. It's based based on 84 hours for every payroll. So it's not, you might work 4 shifts of your 10 hours and 3 shifts of your 14 hours in that 2-week time period, but we pay based on 84 hours every 2 weeks. So there's no real calculation of what their actual time is. So when it comes to the sick time and the vacation time, it's recorded and kept by the administrative assistant in fire. And it's a manual system. But the issue that occurs is we finish payroll, so the 26th payroll of a particular year may happen on, say, December 23rd. And we cut off whatever sick time or vacation time they have at that time, and we pay them out. Then they use a couple of days through the 2 weeks worth of holidays. And essentially, starting January 1, when we reload their banks, it's lowered by whatever they've used through the holidays. So they don't actually get overpaid. I suppose, so to speak, they do for the moment, but it's reduced off their following year's payroll, or their following year's vacation time that's available to them. So let's say, for example, you're a firefighter and we cut off that last cutoff is, say, December 23rd, and you're using 3 of those days. So let's say you had 3 days left of holidays. I'll use an example. I'm trying my best. It makes perfect sense to us. So let's say you have 3 days left on December 23rd. We pay you out that overtime of 3 days because we don't know what you're going to use over the holidays, although we do talk to them and try and find out what are you going to use and what we should pay or not pay. And then come January 1, when we go to reload the banks for their holidays and all their sick time and whatever they get for vacation into their bank, it's reduced if they've used some of those 3 days that they were previously paid for. So it is a timing thing, and it was 2 weeks between Christmas and New Year's and the cutoff for last year's payroll to this year's payroll. It's not a perfect system. We don't like the fact that it's manual, but unfortunately, because of the way we pay them, it's very difficult for us to include it in the payroll system. If you have a bank, you have to use the bank. So we pay based on 84 hours every 2 weeks and not on actual time worked. So we can't use the bank system without having both ends in terms for our payroll system. So.
All right. Does
that make sense?
All right, thank you, Monica. Any other questions or comments? So I'm hearing, Councillor Bray, that you want staff to go back and look at the HR position.
Yeah, just for consideration in 2017, whether it's a part-time position or partway through the year. I just think that we invested a lot in that report, and to ignore the one key staffing recommendation in the whole report would be probably counterproductive to what the report provided us with.
So, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Just a further comment is, we already have somebody working part-time. If we converted that to a full-time position, then we're not looking at a full-time person per se, we're only looking at a part-time person with the same person doing the job for full-time. So
are you talking about firefighters again, Councillor?
We're talking about firefighters? We're back to HR.
No, we're back to HR.
Yeah, we're back to HR.
No, I'm trying to follow what you're saying.
So, all right, so we have somebody working part-time. I don't know, is that the 20 hours split? I'm not sure how it is. But instead of hiring another full-time person, if we could look at converting that job into a full-time job, we'd only be looking at 50% of his full-time salary because she's already getting 50%. That person.
But you're then going to have to replace that part-time 20% or 50% from the job she currently does in Treasury. So it's 6 or 1/2 of the other. That's what I'm trying to understand. Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. I saw the Deputy Mayor's hand going up.
Sure.
Probably going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. So what I was going to suggest, Your Worship, is just leave it with staff. I think we've heard the comments,
Yeah.
and I'll consult with the HR coordinator, and we'll bring something back for committee's consideration with respect to providing support to the function.
So we need a friendly amendment to this motion?
I don't think so, Your Worship. I think that's fine. I think I've got direction, if we recorded in the minutes, that I'll just work with the HR coordinator to bring a further report on the HR, support to the HR function.
All right, I'll then read the question. Moved by Councillor Stockwell, seconded by Councillor Bray. Resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it implement the recommendation from the CAO's review of the KPMG efficiency review recommendations, public report dated November 29, 2016. Any further questions or comments? Madam Deputy Clerk.
With the motion having been read, Your Worship, I'll ask the members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Councillor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Ego?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
In favor, the vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Moving on to item 5C, Coordinated Committee Meeting Section Start Times. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. When council implemented the coordinated committee format of doing its meetings, it also introduced a consent agenda format. It set up a time frame where two of the committees or sections would start in the morning and 2 would start in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. Council also said that after a period of time, it would like to review how that was working and seeing if any adjustments would be required. So this report outlines that review. The committee secretaries were consulted in terms from their perspective. Is it working well? Is there any changes? Committee secretaries to the 4 committees are quite happy with the format. I also spoke to them with respect to moving the start times into the morning. And the recommendations in this report pertains to the 2 afternoon components of the section meeting, moving those into the morning. So community services section will start at 8:30 as it currently does, followed by public works after a short break, followed by general government, and then followed by development services. Spoke with the planning department, both the manager of planning and development review and the committee secretary with respect to moving the public meetings that development services sometimes has from 1 p.m. start to 11 a.m. start. And they were supportive of that. It's important that there be a designated time for the commencement of a public meeting because people are traveling. There's a public notice that goes out with respect to that. And the manager felt that designating an hour, designating 11 a.m. would be sufficient in terms of providing that notice. It would give adequate travel time for people who may be out of town to travel, et cetera, et cetera. Now, not all the meetings end, precisely as discussed in the report. So there needs to be some flexibility. So if the meetings were running a little bit late and we're starting to push up around 10:30, quarter to 11. I think it would be appropriate at that time that whatever meeting's in session would pause. There'd be a break, and then the designated public meeting would start, and then after the public meeting, then whatever was remaining in that agenda would just finish up. So, in summary, Your Worship, members of council, I think the revised section coordinated committee format has worked well. The consent agenda has worked well. The feedback I've received, formally and informally, has been very positive, and it's recommended that council or committee, consider these changes.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll read the question. It's moved by Councillor Ego and seconded by Deputy Mayor Byfolchi. Resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends to council that pursuant to the report of the CAO dated November 29, 2016, that coordinated committee section meeting start times be amended as follows. Development Services section of the committee to commence at the conclusion of the Public Works section, and General Government section to commence at the conclusion of the Development Services section, and that any statutory public meetings be scheduled to commence at 11 a.m. And further, that it is recommended that the changes become effective January 2017, and finally, it is recommended that Council amend its procedural bylaw accordingly. Madam Deputy Clerk.
With the motion having been read, Your Worship, I will ask the members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Councillor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Ego?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Now moving on to item number 5D, Management Board and Beachfront Properties. And again, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. In September, Committee of the Whole passed a motion giving direction that I undertake a review of the establishment of a management board for the beachfront properties. In your agenda package is a copy of the motion that outlines the direction that I was given. So I've gone out and looked at, first of all, the statutory ability of council to be able to establish such a board, and I've been able to confirm that council does have the ability to be able to do that from the Municipal Act perspective. And I've looked at other examples of management boards. Most of the examples that I found in my research pertain to management boards for downtown areas. And they're very similar, or specifically business improvement areas, BIAs commonly referred to. So those are areas within a municipality that's designated, typically with a boundary. There's a management board for a BIA. There's a levy that's that the business owners are charged, and that levy is used to support events and improvements, physical improvements to that designated area. What I was asked to do was not to really look into a BIA, but the management boards that I found were are BIAs, but it was very similar to what the intent of what I understood the Councillor Stockwell had with respect to the motion in terms of managing the beachfront area. So what I've done is I've merged a couple of concepts, basically the management board concept and business improvement area into one, and I've developed somewhat of a draft terms of reference for how this would function if this is what council would like to do. And basically, this board of management would oversee the main end, the beachfront area, and be responsible for buildings, leasing of the buildings, marketing the beachfront area, leases for the retail stores, the restaurant areas, approved maintenance contracts. It would do all of this under council's procedural bylaw with respect to how it conducts its meetings, the council's purchasing bylaw in terms of how it administers purchases. There'd be spending limit put to the committee, so anything above a certain amount would have to come to council for approval. But with below that amount, it would basically function as an independent board. Support would be provided through my office as the secretary to the board. The treasurer would provide the financial analysis to the board. There'd be one dedicated staff person or person to the board, and I'm looking at the property manager position. And there's going to be a further report coming forward to committee dealing with the property management function down there, but I would look at the property manager being the kind of the main point person for this board. This board would be a duly constituted board under council, so it would report to council. It would get direction from council. Council would approve the budget for this board, but basically it would have responsibility for all the functions of the main end as outlined in the report. So that's all the beachfront properties, the Main Street Market, the events that take place down in that area, and I enclosed a map to kind of define under the area that would be covered by the management board in terms of responsibility for programming in that area. So I've outlined it for members of council. I recognize that there may be some parts missing, but excuse me. But before I move forward, I just want to get some direction from council if that's something that you're interested in pursuing further, and what additional information you think you may want to see in order to consider this matter further. So I'll leave it at that and answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. I think passing the responsibility onto a hand-picked committee is shirking our responsibility as the elected leaders of the community. I think this council needs to have some frank discussions about what has gone on down there. Quite frankly, my own opinion is it's a mess. I think the different leases and the things that have gone on is our responsibility to get in order before we would ever consider handing it off to anyone else. I also have concern that this management board is a move towards creating a development corporation down there, which I don't support. I'm concerned about it, and if that's the direction that we're headed, I think the residents should also be concerned. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Smith?
I support this, Your Worship. I think that we've spent too much time micromanaging the whole process down at the beachfront. And I think once this is organized, it'll help with the recommendations from the KPMG report as far as staffing as well. And I will be supporting this motion.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Bray?
Yes, I'm just not sure what Councillor Smith's reference was to the KPMG staffing report.
Well-
Because the only one that I remembered was the HR special. Was there,
Sorry, Councillor?
Regarding special events.
Do you wish to elaborate on that, or?
Well, I don't think it's in this report, but it's in the other reports that, you know, we should look at reorganizing everything under one umbrella, right?
ahead,
and further,
Councillor.
so then my comments, I know the CAO is looking for direction. My direction would be status quo. I think that this council should not be handing over the responsibility for town-owned properties. It should not be out of council's control. We were elected to look after the town. I think we should do. When I look at the terms of, or suggested terms, one was to say that they should take a business-like approach in managing these properties and activities to ensure that Wasaga Beach taxpayers receive the best value for their investment in these properties and initiatives. This council has never come up with a plan to manage that or to identify how we would measure that. We have had staff, highly trained, experienced, very expensive staff looking after it, and I don't think we've got it in order yet. So again, I don't think we should be handing this off. I see it as a complete lack and a huge step backwards away from open and transparent government, and that we should keep the responsibility at this table and not pass it off.
Councillor Stockwell?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. You'll recall that I guess I was about to kick this thing off with a notice of motion to refer the matter to the CAO to bring in a report heading towards a board of management. In receiving the report, I've gone over it quite thoroughly, and I must say that I think it's a good report. I've had the opportunity to meet with the CAO upon receiving the report and sitting down and discussing it with him, and I made it quite clear to him that I thought it was a good report. I think there's a couple of things missing, and I'm not too sure what is in the recommendation that we give direction. I guess we could continue on today and give direction, or we could all send him a memo saying, here's some recommendations that I have, and then let him go ahead and give consideration to them and bring them back. But the things that I totally agree with the workload. The marketing of the area and the major beachfront tourist area, approving the leases, maintenance contracts, annual budgets, special events, and clearly the council is in control and should be in control over the budgets. And once a year, the board would bring forward a budget for consideration by council. It would be approved and generally give it back to them and let them go on and do their thing. The spending authority of $50,000 is fine. I think where I do find a problem is, I have no trouble with the property management being a staff person. But the thing that I think we would have some problems, it really wouldn't solve the concerns that I have, in that I think the board is in need of at least one managing type of staff. I know that the CAO is suggesting one permanent person, property management. Well, I think that individual, I would agree, but that individual probably wouldn't have a full 12-month job down there, because it's pretty dead down there in the winter. But I could see the property manager maybe carrying on other duties that the CAO might find him or her to do in the down season. But over and above the property manager, I think there's a need for a general manager, someone who's in charge. Now, I've served on a number of boards. I still do. I serve on the airport committee, representing this municipality, and as everybody knows, that's owned by Collingwood, and they They strike the budget once a year. They have, the management board has their own general manager. They have their own staff. They operate the thing. And when they have come to the point where they need some direction from council, they go to council and get that direction. I think it works fairly well. I think this would work fairly well if we could get over that, the first point saying there is a need for a general manager. Secondly, there is a need to have staff on site. I think one of the major problems that we've seen over the last 2 years in the summer season is there's a conflict between the permanent tenants down there and those people that come in to do weekend shows, and they conflict. They conflict with selling the same products that the permanent people in, and they get their back up, and rightly so. They also conflict with where their equipment goes, and we've heard that quite a bit from down there. And I think that's something that has to be addressed. So generally, I think we're on the right track. I would like to be given the opportunity to at least send a missive to the CAO and say, will you please consider the following? Give them 2 or 3 things to consider. I think everybody on council should do the same. And if we could do that between the time it leaves committee and gets to council for ratification, then maybe there's some changes to be made. 85% I totally agree with, but I think the 15% that hasn't been addressed could be a make or break situation for the board's survival.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Belanger?
I'm fine.
I thought you had seen your hand up. Councillor Ego?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just feel that since the time of the purchase of the main beach, this council has been divided in many different ways, and it's caused this council more time, and more time has been spent on the downtown, which I could like to think it would be spent in other areas. I'm fully in support of the Board of Management, and the reason is like it survives in many other municipalities. Or, as a matter of fact, if it's good enough for something as big as Toronto, what's wrong with that? Kitchener or some other places have Board of Managements. I think that we have to do a little bit more study on it, but I think that it would work, and I think it would give this council more time to do other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused. The report that was submitted talked a lot about business improvement areas. There's examples of other municipalities running BIAs. BIAs are funded by the businesses that are in that area. I have no problem with a BIA, because if you live down there and you benefit from the events, absolutely you should be paying into them. But this management board is a town-created, town-funded, and there's no examples of those in this report. They're BIAs, but there is nothing that says maybe Toronto does it, maybe Kitchener does it, but I'd like to see what other municipality does it, where they do it, what power they give to people. Because again, I feel we were elected to do this. We might not, like each other, we might not get along, but we're all working for the residents of Wasaga Beach, and I think to shirk the responsibility and pass it over to a committee of, whoever is not in the best interest of the taxpayers. We bought that property, we have an obligation to manage it.
Councillor Stockwell? I'm sorry, Councillor Ego?
Yes, rebuttal to that I agree with most things that Councillor Bray is saying, but in this situation, the difference between this and the BIA is we own most of the beach, and it's a town-owned situation. And I think that we have to have some sort of control over it with the Board of Management. With the other instances, they're run by a business community, and that's altogether different here. This is something that the taxpayers own, and we're responsible for it.
Councillor Belanger?
Yeah, I would just say again, and to Bill Stockwell's point, if you have the right individuals that have the level of expertise and a lot of what we're dealing with, a lot of what comes to council about leases and everything else, that is not something that we have any history in or being effective at dealing with that. And some of the discussion over whether it should be a 3,000 or 6,000 or 5,000 is or whether this location or another location. I've certainly been in malls in my whole life, and I understand that location does alter leases significantly, and I think an expert should be making those decisions and not council. We get into a lot of discussions that could be, again, better spent on moving our community forward, so.
Councillor Smith?
I have a question.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Thank you. Just to Councillor Blanger's point, for members of the public, are we going to make sure that they're experts in certain fields? Like, you know, we picked other committees, and I don't know that they're experts in anything, so that would be my concern, is that we're picking people from the municipality who may not have the expertise that we need.
I was referring to Bill's comment about the requirement of a general manager. I would think that person would be an individual that would possess that kind of knowledge. But
Councillor Bray?
So then I guess we should maybe refer this back for kind of a rewrite that would include paid positions and a budget for what the management board would look like if there was staff on it. This year we managed our leases with staff and council, so to hand them off to a volunteer board, I don't think is the right thing to do.
Councillor Stockwell?
Mr. Mayor, I think the one thing we miss in the way we do business in Wasaga Beach is we miss the expertise of a number of residents that live in the community. That we have a large retiree section in this community, and when you talk to those people, and I've met them, I've met them on occasions, and they have had pretty wide and successful careers before they decided to retire. And I think by going to the people of the community and saying, look, we're looking for four individuals, and we should really suggest an area that they should have some expertise in. And when they make their application to serve on the board, tell us what you've done in the past. Because I think that we could get some people that have entertainment background and the bookings of entertainment, that would be good. If we could get somebody that understood the building and the upgrades of buildings and the cost of doing work on the building, that would be good. If we could get somebody who's been operating a public facility in the way of whether it be a golf course or what have you, that had catering involved, that would be good. And I think the fourth would be a discussion, another item that would probably be used, and the expertise of council would be good in that regard. But we've got a lot of talent out there. And I think that if we could get a committee that we're charged with the operation and bring to the table expertise of their own doing, then I think the end result would be a very successful site. Not that it isn't now, but it could be better, much better. And I agree with that. Our staff has done a wonderful job down there, and I wouldn't be critical of them. And probably, when we talk about staff for the board, I'm not suggesting that we would go out and hire people from the street. I think we've got in-house staff. And whether we could second them for an amount of time to work down there, but they've got to report to the board if they're seconded. I mean, you can't serve two masters. I think suggested by the CAO, if you have specific items like the operations chap, I think there's work to be done year-round, because really there's a seasonal job down there. Whatever the season starts, 1st of April, whenever it ends, the end of October, then the balance could be put to work somewhere else. Even during the season, there may be a need. I mean, where do we deal with special events? We have special events on site, but you've got special events right across the municipality. So if you have an expert staffer in special events, maybe it's a case of seconding him or her to the board for a certain amount of time. As far as cost is concerned, I don't see there be that much more cost involved, because really there's a lot of money being spent now on the waterfront area that are in a number of budgets that are operating now. I mean, the Works Department does work down there. Finance certainly does work, handles the leases, what have you. On and on and on. Bylaw, parking. So all of those are already there, and there's money in those budgets. I think the exercise would be to look at those budgets, find out how much is put to the beachfront, and then transfer it over to the board. Whether the board has direct control over the staff or not, that's for council to decide. But I think that there really is a need to make changes down there structurally, organizationally, and I think it could be a very, very successful area with the right kind of management.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brady?
Thank you. I just think that this management board plan kind of puts the cart before the horse, because we don't yet have a plan for what we're going to do down at the beachfront. We don't yet have a park for special events. We have a special events department that's staffed, and they do different things with outside agencies in our parking lot, but we don't have a special events park. We don't have a banquet hall for catering, as Councillor Stockwell indicated. We don't have a beach to manage. So we're suddenly looking to possibly hire or to appoint a bunch of people to a board to hire and to manage. If all we want to do is manage the business community down there, start a BIA. Let the people that have skin in the game put money into the events that they want to see down there. I don't think that this is an entire town problem. There's 10, 20, 30 businesses down there that will benefit. Let them contribute to a BIA that affects that area. I don't think it should be paid staff positions from council or from the town until the town decides what we want to see happen down there.
Any questions or comments? All right, so the CAO is looking for direction. What I'm hearing, Mr. CAO, is that Councillor Bray would like more information with respect to these types of boards as opposed to BIAs. Is that correct, Councillor Bray?
Yeah, because the report that I read said a BIA is a great idea. I would love to see the people with money down there investing in the events that happen at the front door. But to have the taxpayers, 95% residential taxpayers, fund the events that happen at Beach One for 20 or 30 businesses, I don't think is fair.
Okay. And what I'm hearing from you, Councillor Stockwell, is that members of council should submit their thoughts to the CAO, and I would say within an acceptable period of 7 to 14 days, so he can come back with a full report then with more information, both with respect to these types of boards and answering and addressing those concerns. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. Just one more final comment, Your Worship. I mean, I agree with everyone over here, and especially Councillor Belanger. We have spent so much time on minuscule little things that really somebody else should be looking after. If there's a squabble between tenants, there should be someone there that we don't have to spend 20 minutes at council talking about. I think that it's necessary, and I think as we get further into development, and we will have a plan after the meeting tomorrow night, but I think that once we get into developers being there, they need to see that it's being professionally run, and we have other issues that will be coming forward that I don't think council needs to spend their time on the little itty bitty things, so that's my feeling on it.
Any other questions or comments? Read the question. Moved by Councillor Stockwell. Sorry, Mr. CEO, you're fairly clear on what we're looking for here?
Yeah, if I may.
Please do.
Your Worship, just that, I think the majority, and I emphasize the majority because I know that there's a minority, the majority think that going in the right direction. There needs to be more information gathered. I'd like to see a little bit more detail in terms of budget, staffing, et cetera, and bring that information back, and council will further consider moving forward on this particular matter. That's what I understand.
That's correct. All right, then, moved by Councillor Stockwell, second by Councillor Eagle, resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it receives a report from the CAO dated November 29, 2016 on the potential of establishing a management board to oversee the operation of the beachfront properties, including the Main Street Market, and further that the committee provide direction to the CAO on the next steps. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. With the motion having been read, Your Worship, I'll ask members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor by Fulcher. Sorry, Fulcher, sorry. Councillor Bray?
Sorry, we're receiving the report for information, but we are getting an additional report for information.
That's correct.
So a vote in favor doesn't support the report, it supports the getting additional information.
You want me to read it again, Councillor?
If you could.
Moved by Councillor Stockwell and seconded by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it receive the report from the CAO dated November 29, 2016 on the potential of establishing a management board to oversee the operations of the beachfront properties, including the Main Street Market. And further, that committee provide direction to the CAO on the next steps.
And those next steps are clearly to provide another report.
Correct. Correct.
In favor. Thank you.
Councillor Eagle?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
The vote is 6 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. And moving on to item number 5E. Proposed 2017 operating and capital budget. Madam Treasurer, welcome back.
Your worship,
Floor is yours.
just need to adjust my... Okay, so we're back again, and we're talking about the 2017 budget, and we've also brought forward information for the next 4 years, as well as the 10-year capital plan. So a couple of weeks back, we reviewed the list of open items that had been removed from the budget, and brought back some options for council to fund those recommendations that they would like to see in the 2017 budget. So those things that have been included are listed there. I won't go through every one, but I will talk about the items that are still excluded from the budget, and that we had said that we would keep a list of that as well. So there are a few items that are still not included in the 2017 budget, and that is the municipal grass cutting and the level of service for that, Public Works and Parks and Rec. The referendum for the disposition of hydro has been removed. The communication specialist within the administration department. The lifeguard positions and the lifeguard stations are no longer in the 17 budget. An urban designer in the planning department has been removed. The town beautification student from the Parks and Rec department has been removed. And the Main Street Market rental chair attendant has also been removed. So based on the information that we have right now, and in terms of what we used from reserves to fund the 2017 budget, we're at a 1.72% tax rate increase, which is a 4.24% with the notional rate. This equates to essentially $41.39 on the average taxpayer's bill for 2017, an increase of $41.39. That doesn't include the county and the Board of Education, which would then bring that total up to $41.62. The average home in 2017 is worth $317,000 in the town. So after you take in that phased-in amount, that includes that phase-in as well. So it's both the municipal tax rate increase as well as the value of your home increasing, is the $41.62. So when we looked at that tax rate, we often look at our neighboring communities and sort of what it means for the next 4 years. And that's where we've brought in the information for 2018 to 2021. But the next graph that I have in the report shows you where the town stands in comparison to the neighboring municipalities. If you take all 16 of us in the county of Simcoe, including the city of Orillia and Barrie, we are right in the middle, or close to the lower middle position. If you remove what we would consider to be rural municipalities, essentially on average we're 25% lower than the comparators that we use. So that would include Collingwood, Penetanguishene, Midland, Clearview, Innisfil, and Bradford, Westfield, and Barrie. So in comparison to their 2016 tax rates, which is extremely important, and our 2017 tax rate, there's a 25% gap. Staff have looked at this and have tried to incorporate the next 4 years to make sure that we can move forward with council's direction and council's priorities over the next several years. The issue that occurs once we get into 2018 to 2021 is there are a lot of new capital priorities, as well as the beachfront taking into position in 2018, that no longer is fully funded through reserves. So what then happens is that over the next 4 years, we see increased tax rates, and if you look at Schedule B, the very last page of the report, from 2018 to 2021, the average is just over 3% increase if we continue with a 1.72% in 2017. Staff have looked at many different options to try and address that. There are a lot of big capital items that come up in 19, 20, and 21. Most notably is the multi-use rec center or arena/library, however that building is formed. River Road West will be completed. From Brillinger to Powerline, the Main Street Bridge gets completed. Some of these things are offset by grants, of course, but they also have a taxation impact that are included. We've done different scenarios in terms of how we borrow in comparison to larger rates or longer term years, so there are other options as well. But I think it's really important for us to note that when we have several years of low tax rate increases, it creates sort of a bottleneck as we get further and further into the future. And that's largely, for our situation, is because we have these big capital projects that are coming down the pipe. When we look at those other comparators, and I'm specifically talking about urban municipalities, we offer similar services. We provide similar types of rec programs. We provide transit, we all have similar services, but essentially our tax rate is 25% lower than what those neighboring municipalities are. And if we'd like, sorry.
Oh, carry on. Well, I'll take questions on that, Councillor.
And if we'd like to continue down that path in terms of the urbanization of the town, our concern is that if we maintain this very a minimal tax rate increase, we end up sort of creating that backlog of issues as we push it further and further out. 1.72%, although is, a little bit above CPI right now, or inflation right now, the reality is in our situation each year, our operational levy alone increases by just about $1 million each year, and that is strictly fixed costs. Salary costs, hydro, utilities, insurance, all of those things are something that staff doesn't have a large control over without addressing efficiency. And on that standpoint, we've received our efficiency report that says essentially there's not much room to give in terms of what staff can do. So when we look at just the $1 million, as we all know, that's a 5%. It's $200,000 for every point of taxation impact. The issue becomes when we're only increasing by 1.72, or even if you look at the notional rate of 4.24, we still haven't addressed that base, that 1 million that increases each year. In 2017, one of the biggest impacts that we have is we had 4 new firefighters, 6 in total, 2 that were included in previous budgets, and 4 that are included in 2017. That alone is just below 2%. When you add that to union contracts and all the fixed cost information that we just talked about, that creates, it eats up whatever we get in terms of phase-in increase, because we talk about that a lot, and then a minimal tax rate increase on top of that creates sort of a gap between what the town is offering and the base tax rate that we currently have. So we wanted to bring that to your attention so that you could focus a little bit on the next 4 years as well. And I think if you look through the package, I have what our increases are set at, and they're mainly set at, I would say, inflationary, or what is considered to be normal for that type of program. For example, for benefits, they have gone up by 3.5% in terms of the next 4 years, but that's based on historical, not necessarily CPI. So we wanted to make sure that we were addressing those issues and being able to look at the bigger picture. This continues with a $2.2 million contribution to the asset management plan that we had presented a few weeks ago. So there is, we are addressing a portion of the future by looking at that $2.2 million. Our big concern is this gap that we're creating for the next 4 years. So if I can just bring you to 2018 to 2021, I talked about the River Road West project, the Public Works Depot is included in there as well, Mosley Street urbanization, a multi-use sports facility including the library, the Main Street bridge repairs. We have Sunnydale Trails coming on board at some point, and there are a lot of parks and recreation activities that will occur out in that area too. The difficulty that becomes with that particular development is we won't see the assessment till long after the contribution is made to get that property going. So that's another thing that we need to think about as well. In terms of the operating budget, I have for the next 4 years, I have included items basically at historical values in terms of what the increases that we do see. There is some conservatism applied there to make sure that we have some room in the next 4 years to address issues as they come about. But I think it's a fairly good amount in terms of what the increases are. We've based all debentures at a borrowing rate of 3.5%. At this point, it is lower than that. What we are seeing from Infrastructure Ontario is about 2.25 on a 10-year, but we just want to be conservative in terms of setting up the next 4 years. We have kept the terms at 10 years, although for some projects we would go longer, like the multi-use sportsplex. It would make sense to debenture that across 25 years, considering that the future people that are going to be using it should be the ones that pay for the majority of it, not the current. But then there are smaller projects, for example, a public works truck or something along those lines, that we would have at a lower borrowing rate, which would be about 5 years. So we're just using a combined rate of 10 years. There's pluses and minuses in that, so conservatism is applied there as well. In terms of our investment rates, I have kept them at 2%, although as you know, in our last investment activity report, the one fund is doing much better than that. However, we don't receive that interest or aren't able to realize that interest until we actually cash in those investments. And the idea is that those investments will help to pay the asset management plan and water and wastewater in the future. In terms of the ONPF, we continue with, as I talked about, the 2.2 million transferred to reserves that we identified in the asset management plan. And then anything outside of that then goes back into the operational levy to offset that. So we're not going anywhere beyond the 2.2 million in terms of a transfer from reserves. So depending on the level of funding that we do receive, the percentages vary, but essentially at the high end it's at 92% and at the low end in 2018 it's at 76%. I don't think I'm missing anything. George, do you have any?
No, just if you, on page 7, just kind of recap in terms of 2017 and then looking at 2018, what we're thinking.
So 2017, as I mentioned, is set at a 1.72% tax rate increase. That means that the average home will go up at about $42. And then in terms of at the end of 2021 versus 2017, the overall impact would be about 3% per year, which is essentially equivalent to what the phase-in has been budgeted at as well. Mind you, that is the tax rate increase, 3%, and not the notional. The notional would be the 3 plus 3 each year, which would be 6% each year. And that's, I think that's it.
Thank you, Monica. Councillor Belanger.
Well, I was just going to ask the question so that I'm very clear. Is on your graph comparing to other urban centers, you've already factored in RE increase, but all of the other urban centers are likely to have an increase this year. So we're probably going to end up at probably 27% as opposed to 25% below. That remains to be seen. Do we have any conversations with any of other municipalities to see how they're doing in their budgeting process? Or
If I can, Your Worship. So we do have some discussions. There's been a few that have already passed. I believe Aurelia passed at 2.3 in that neighborhood. At this point, everybody's still kind of running the numbers, so I haven't gotten a lot of feedback in terms of what they're going forward with, but I think when I look at our tax rate versus theirs, I always try to use their previous year because things can change so drastically over the next few weeks for them. So to be fair, I want to make sure I'm using their real tax rate and not necessarily what might be proposed or not proposed. So I am using their 2016 tax rate, but there would be, if our tax rate, if their tax rates go up at a higher percentage, yes, then there would be, it would increase the gap, but I don't know that for sure.
I was just curious, because there's been a lot in the press lately about some of the development that they're doing in the waterfront in Collingwood and the waterfront in Barrie and other things. So they also have projects underway similar to ourselves, so it'll be interesting to see where they end up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Worship. If you go back to page 2 with the items that have for discussion that have been excluded, I have a motion coming forward regarding the communications specialist. The motion, I'd like to see that person start right away. And I do have a motion. I think we need some discussion with all the issues we're dealing with now. We need somebody who is a really expert in communications. I've discussed this with George, who seems to be part of our communications team right now. And I think George can speak to what I'm requesting as well. So,
Wish to speak to that, Mr. Cielo?
Just briefly, Your Worship, yes, this is something that from a staff perspective, this is we would support this in terms of having additional communication resources within the organization. We're finding as a municipality, we're very reactive in terms of how we communicate, and I think what we'd like to do is we'd like to be a little bit more proactive in terms of getting council's message out with respect to what's happening and what's going on. There's a variety of forums as well, that we could be communicating in to get our message out, and it just requires more resources than we currently have. So from a staff perspective, we would support this.
Thank you. Councillor?
just wondering when the motion would come on the floor.
Well, Councillor Bray had her hand up, so I'm going to take her question or comment, and then we can put that motion on the floor.
Question.
I do as well. Councillor Strunkel, Councillor Bray.
Okay, so just a question, if we're adding back items that we've already removed, perhaps we could remove something that we've left in there. It could maybe be the establishment of a development corporation, because there's 100,000 there, and if you wanted to trade that for the communication specialist, it wouldn't impact the overall percentage of the budget increase.
Councillor Stockwell.
Question to the treasurer. Refresh my memory again. What did you say the impact on the additional firefighters impact was?
It's just under 2%, 1.89.
It's 1.89. Okay. And then is that including the the full year employment where you've got listed under 2017 operational levy notable items? Full year of 6 additional firefighters, contract negotiation, 500,000?
Yes.
So that's included the impact.
That includes so it includes the 4 brand new.
Yeah.
And then the 2, the original 2 were at half year in 2016. So half year of the full year impact of them, and then the contract negotiations that are currently underway.
So refresh my memory. When we did that, we did it in 2016 this year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And was it in the 2016 budget?
Two firefighters were included mid-year in the 2016 budget. So there was an addition of 4 in total, plus 2 full year amounts.
So it's 500,000 to...
Which includes the contract negotiation. So that's the key, because I can't lump that out separate.
I mean, and that's done, so we made those decisions.
Yeah, those decisions are done. Yeah, absolutely.
So if we talk about cost of living, it's cost of living plus those decisions that we made in the past. As the saying goes, that the chickens are now coming home to roost.
Yes, that's sort of the point we were trying to make, is that we are just slightly above what CPI is right now, or the cost of living, which is at, I think, 1.5, and we're at 1.72. But the reality is that 1.89% increase was due to the 4 firefighters that were added in 2016.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
sorry,
I have
Councillor,
another item, but I'll tag on to the end when everybody's finished.
All right. Councillor Bray?
Yeah, I had a question about the county percentage. Did theirs go down as well as the education?
So the county has an increase of 2% on their overall expenditures. However, their tax rate does go down based on that information. Again, that's based on us using the assessment today, so it will go down slightly. It's about 0.5% that it's going down.
So how does that work? I'm sorry.
So because the
MPAC
MPAC
goes
assessment,
up.
that's right. And the expenditures are going up, but the expenditures aren't going up at the same rate as the MPAC assessment is.
So we will still be paying more, which is what residents write to us to complain about, even though they see a tax decrease at the county level, their taxes will still go up because of the assessment.
That's right.
And does that happen with education too?
No, education, the rules around education are a little bit different. They have to use the same, they have to decrease, I can't think of the word, I'm sorry. They have to maintain a notional tax rate increase of essentially 0. So you'll see that theirs actually goes down by 1.5%. That's under the Education Act or whatever, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Worship. I'll just go back to the budget question, if I may. With the capital forecast for 2018 to 2027, the 10-year capital forecast, those costs that we've got for urbanization, public works, depot, et cetera, are those in today's dollars, or have you estimated them out in future dollars?
No, so they are included as future, depending on where they lie. So if it ends in 2021, we have included an inflationary impact.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Councillor Stockwell, and then I'm going to read your motion, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other thing I would like to comment on is the municipal grass cutting that we removed for $147,000. And you recall that, and listen, I'm not going to suggest we put it back in because I can look around the table and see that there's probably not support for it. But I would like to comment that when we were discussing those things, I raised a couple of times the chance of getting bids on contracting out both grass cutting and snow removal. And after I made those comments, the CAO was good enough to take me aside and tell me that we just can't do that. And I think council should realize that we can't do that, because that, to me, it's still a good idea. But if we're stopped from doing that, I would like the CAO to explain why.
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Worship. And just to clarify, the municipality is able to contract out, but under certain provisions and certain circumstances. So those circumstances and provisions are covered under our collective agreements, and we have a collective agreement with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, and it's those provisions that govern contracting out. And it's only in the case where there will be no layoff of current QP members where we can contract out. So we can, but it's under the rules and terms under the collective agreement.
Which really stops us from making any savings. And Mr. CAO, when did that come into being?
The clause that I refer to, I think it's been in the collective agreement for some time. And I asked for an interpretation just so that I was clear, but I think that clause has been in for a long time with respect to the contracting out. We did have a minimum staffing letter of understanding in the collective agreement that was introduced at the last round of negotiations a couple of years ago.
All right, I'll read your motion, Councillor Smith, and if you wish to speak to it again, you may. Moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it includes the position of communication specialist into 2017 operating budget at a cost of $100,000 based on a January start date. Questions or comments on this? Madam Deputy Clerk?
No, I have a...
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Blanchet.
I believe there's a need, and I think there's a number of meetings that are going to come up before the budget goes final. I would like to I would like to think that the 1.72 that's being suggested will be our threshold, and I believe that we need to maybe find some savings if we go forward. But I am in favor, but I'm hoping that we can find some savings somewhere within the budget.
All right. Madam Treasurer?
If I may,
You may.
so I think what needs to be clarified for staff is how the position is funded. So essentially 100,000 for a full January start would be a half a percentage point, which would bring us up to 2.2-ish. Just so for clarity for staff, so we understand how you would like to fund that.
Mr. CAO, I'm assuming that we're going to hire a full-time staff at 0.5%. It's going to be funded the way all the rest of the staff are funded. So to your point, or to Councillor Belanger's point, we either find savings somewhere else or we increase the tax rate. I mean, I think the staff have done a phenomenal job, worked very hard, taking it back to zero and coming back to where we were from where we started at 3.98,
9.8,
whatever it was. But they're not miracle workers either. And there's no doubt that as we move forward, we are going to have an issue with our base tax rate. As you can see from this report, that we are still about 25% lower than all the comparative communities to us, which is great, but I think we want to try and stay there. But there's going to be some increases if we want more services, or we need more staff to do the job that's required to be done, or whatever the case may be. This is all going to cost money, and I'm the first one to say that we should be looking to save dollars and cents, but to your point, Councillor, if you want to add $1,000 to the budget where we are today, I don't want you to be disappointed if staff can't find that somewhere else. That's my comment. So, Mr. CEO, do you wish to comment here?
No, I think that we'll take whatever decision is made by committee of the whole. We'll work with what we have, the information we have. If there's any new information, we'll present it subject to the second motion being dealt with at the public meeting dealing with the budget.
All right. Councillor Bray?
Just a comment that we are pulling from our reserves to get this budget down to 1.72%. And I think to just add staff at the table like this when we've just been through KPMG efficiency report isn't proper. We've been through the big report. It said, hey, there isn't a lot of fat in there. You maybe need a person here, but they didn't identify anything else. So to sit here and have two people decide that we need a communications person is, and that the taxpayers should pay for that communications person, I think is wrong. I can't support this.
Councillor Smith?
Just one comment. It's right now, I'm not sure everybody's aware that we do have a communications person on staff, but that our CAO is doing the communications. And he's already got his plate full, and I don't think he should be taxed with having this other job on top of what he's already doing.
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify, certainly from my perspective, I assist our current Special Event Communications Coordinator. Certainly, that individual has their plate full with respect to dealing with events and whatnot. So what's happened is that communications, as I indicated earlier, sometimes is done in a reactive manner. And I think because of the time spent on events, that the resource for communications sometimes is not there. So I think it's only fair when that individual has the opportunity to perform the communication function. That person does it very well, and certainly any input I can provide is more on just a wordsmithing perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I think it's also important to point out, as per the KPMG report, we are a very lean running organization here, and that may very well be part of or some part of our issue, but the staff are doing the best they can. There's no doubt in my mind, being as lean as it is, and if you want staff to do a good job, you have to give them the tools and the ability to do that. And I don't think the report could have been any clearer as to how lean this organization is. So if that means that we need to add some assistance to the staff to do that, there's a cost to that, then so be it. But we we certainly need to have a hard look at it, and I'm confident that staff will do that. Councillor Belanger.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify, I know that as we allocate, we talk about some being coming from reserve, but my understanding is that once the fund is applied, we will actually, at 1.72, we will add to our reserve for the year, but we won't be hitting the gap figure, the optimum figure that we would like. But we're at 1.72, we will still end up adding to our total reserve. Is that correct?
So there would be a net positive impact. Unfortunately, I did not bring that number with me. However, it's...
I've added all this up.
Sorry, Councillor, let the staff member finish, please.
So this isn't the only impact to reserves. We also use reserves to fund the capital program as well. So I could bring forward or provide the council with that information on the side, but or at the next draft. But certainly, we're not meeting what we need and what we've said in terms of the asset management plan, and that's 2.2 million. So it's a big gap, certainly.
Just a quick question. Any communities you know of that are meeting that asset management plan gap?
Certainly not, and that's a fair point. Certainly not, no.
And how are we doing compared to most?
We are certainly doing better and compared to most because we are a younger system, but we don't want to get into the situation that they're in. So that's the point that we're trying to make as staff.
Did you have something else to add, Councillor? Go ahead. Oh, you're good?
I'm good.
All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, Madam Deputy Clerk, please call the question or call the vote.
Yeah, with the motion having been read, Your Worship, I'll ask members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
Opposed.
Councillor Bray?
Could you reread the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Eagle. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it include the position of a communications specialist in the 2017 operating budget at a cost of $100,000 based on the January start date.
Opposed.
Councillor Eagle?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
The vote is 5 in favor, 2 opposed. The motion is carried.
Any other questions or comments with respect to budget?
Yeah, if I could put
Councillor
forward-
Bray?
Yes, I had suggested that we maybe remove something to make room in the budget for this position. And there was 2 items in there that I thought could be, there was $180,000, I think, for the beachfront management. Just have to find it. Number 3 and 4. So number 3 is the establishment of a development corporation. We haven't had discussions about a development corporation. Earlier on, we were talking about a management board. I'm not sure if there's some confusion as to one or the other, or if this is the same thing. But we haven't had discussions about a development corporation, so I think that one could easily be removed. And the other possibility is the beach area 1 and 2 property management. We've got $180,000 in there. Everything I understand is that we shouldn't be funding wages through our reserves, which is what this would be doing because it's a short term for 1 year. We then have to find those wages for years moving forward. So I think somehow there's 300,000 there. I would be happy enough to just take 100,000 out of the combined so that this newly created position doesn't cost the taxpayers.
Madam Treasurer, do you have a question?
So if I may just clarify, the number 4 though is town taking the, I hate saying takeover, but it's not beachfront property management. It's us taking care of the sand and the enforcement down at beach areas 1 and 2. And I just wanted to be clear that it's not specific to our buildings, and it is separate. And in terms of the establishment of the development corporation, that's something that was brought forward by the economic development officer. And it is funded 100% through reserve, so it doesn't actually open up, unless we decided to fund the communication specialist, which I wouldn't recommend through reserves. It doesn't open that up, just to be clear. So.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
So is the development corporation the same thing as the management board that we've just discussed?
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, it's different. So a development corporation is a corporation constituted under the legislation that is responsible for the development of whatever area is designated, beachfront, Main Street, that kind of thing. So it's a different animal, and
So we're budgeting for something we haven't yet talked about. So then I would like to put a motion forward to remove that from the 2017 budget, please.
Other questions or comments while the CAO is preparing that?
100,000.
Just one item.
Just the one item. I imagine we will talk about the beachfront at some point.
Clarification, Your Worship, if I may.
Councillor Smith?
To the CAO. The Development Corporation, was that budgeted based on 1 year, or was it based on when was the expenditure expected for the 100,000? Was it
Madam Treasurer?
setting up or what? Yeah.
So this is just the setup. This is the 2017 legal costs that were anticipated for the setup of that.
Councillor Bray?
So a development corporation, would that run similar to Wasaga Distribution Incorporated? It would be a separate company with a separate board with their own area of secrecy?
If I may, Your Worship, it's a corporation struck under the appropriate legislation. It functions as a board. It's given responsibility with respect to overseeing development. So it deals with development and negotiates with developers. It deals with incentives for development. They take on different forms. There are different types of development corporations. They're all under the same legislation. We did some research on this probably, I think, 18 months ago now in terms of looking at development corporations. And I'd be happy to bring some of that information back to committee so that you can understand what a development corporation is. We do have some information that I can certainly share.
It's also important, Mr. CEO, that we have an education session on that from perhaps an expert in the field of development corporations to explain it to council so they understand how it would work and its purposes. Much the same as distribution under the laws of Ontario. Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Thank you. I would just ask if we are going to have an education session that it be open to the public, because I think it's important that they understand that this council chooses to put a development corporation in place to look after their investment. I think that they need to have a clear understanding as to what it means, because I believe it would be this council handing it over, that they could do acquisitions, dispositions, they'd be looking after it, and I think that it needs to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Deputy Mayor Byfolchi. Resolved that funding for a development corporation of $100,000 be removed from the proposed 2017 budget. Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger?
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Councillor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Eagle?
Opposed?
Councillor Smith?
Opposed?
Councillor Stockwell?
Opposed?
Mayor Smith?
Opposed.
The vote is 2 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion is defeated.
Other questions or comments with respect to the budget tonight? Councillor Belanger?
Yeah, great job, Monica. Mike, I mean, that's a ton of work. I thought it was excellent.
I'll read the question. Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Bray. Resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council consider the proposed 2017 operating and capital budget second draft and the 4-year operating plan and the 10-year capital forecast as presented by the Treasurer in her report dated November 29, 2016, and further that staff be authorized to publish the appropriate notice for the budget public meeting scheduled December 13, 2016. Questions or comments? I'll make a comment that I'm feeling highly doubtful that we're going to get to the final portion of this budget by the 13th of December to take it to the public. So I'm just wondering if maybe, Mr. CIO, you want to look at that and bring something back. I think we're going to need at least one more meeting with respect to budget.
Mr. Chair, certainly from the standpoint in terms of, this is the public portion of the budget where the public have the opportunity to speak to council It's also the evening where your various department heads make presentations on their respective budgets. So there's a statutory notice requirement in terms of we need to get a notice out in the paper. That's why it's being dealt with today. We do have a committee of the whole meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. So if there are budget items that could be brought forward, that could be brought forward at the next committee of the whole. The key part there is just to advertise for the meeting. If council feels comfortable that it wishes to go to the public with the budget, then you would approve that recommendation.
So what happens in a case if we're not prepared and we're not completed? We haven't come to consensus for the budget to be prepared for the public, and we've advertised for the 13th. Madam Treasurer?
Just if,
You
Mr.
go
CEO?
first, yeah.
Maybe I'll start and then the treasurer can fill in wherever I made a mistake or there's gaps. It's just the public meeting on the 13th. That's where the various budgets are presented. The decision on the budget is at a later meeting. That would be tentatively be on the 20th of December or into the new year, however council feels appropriate.
No, I understand that fully. But if council has not made its conclusion with respect to budget, and we're now going to go on the 13th and have staff and whatnot present to the public, and council then makes change after that, do we have to report back to the public again? No. Okay, that's my question.
So if I may, and on our public notice, you know, and I think we're pretty close. We have this one item that we want to be included, and we can certainly bring the draft forward on December 6th. But it on the notice it says it's subject to change if council. So we can easily just say sorry. You know, we're not going to do. I mean, it's not the great. We don't want to do that, but you can. There's certainly the option to do that.
We're clear on that. All right, Madam Deputy Clerk, please call the vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to respond with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bartolci?
In favor.
Councillor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Eagle?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Under item number 6, items for future meetings and new items, you can see those on page 3. If there's any questions or comments on those items, seeing none. Moving on to item 7, closed session. We have no closed session this evening, and this meeting is adjourned.